My name's David, and I've been scuba diving for a few years now. I've been combining it with my passion for photography and videography. When I was getting started with using the GoPro for underwater filming, I knew next to nothing about it. I just about understood that you lose a bit of red light. This is the guide I wish I'd had when I'd gotten started, and I hope it's useful to other people. I'm going to quickly look at the difference that using filters makes. I'm going to show the difference of using lights and how this influences colour balancing, both how the image comes off the camera and how the image looks and gets processed in video editing software. I'm going to be using DaVinci Resolve as my video editor of choice. The free version is everything you will need to edit your diving videos. It's exceptionally powerful. I have gone for the studio version that's got a few extra bells and whistles, but that's only required if you want to dive deeper into video editing or you've got more advanced needs. The first thing to say about filters is it's something that attaches to the front of the camera. Over time I've used two different types of filters. The first type of filters that I've used were these ones from a company called CamKicks. They come as a collection of little plastic squares that fit into a holder that then attaches to the dive housing for the camera. I used a set for the GoPro Hero 4 and my more recent GoPro Hero 7. I've also used the Backscatter Flip 9 system. This allows you to use two separate filters attached to the front of the dive housing. A very quick overview of colour balancing. This is taking the image how it comes off the camera and enhancing it. Often with diving footage, this is removing some of the blue, increasing the contrast, and sometimes making the colours pop just a little bit more. Here we see the footage as it came off the camera. I'll morph it into how it looks after I finish fiddling around with it. I've introduced on the left how the original footage looked. As you can see on the right it is transformed into something that you would be used to seeing on a TV show or film. On the left is how it came off the camera. This is all done in post-production on the computer. I'm going to use some of the screens from DaVinci Resolve to demonstrate what's going on with colour. This is not intended to be a tutorial on DaVinci Resolve or how it works, or an in-depth look into colour science. I am just using the software to demonstrate what is going on with the colours. Using the colour tab of the application, I can look at the details of one of the clips. Here is a shot from above the water of everybody getting ready for the dive. On the right-hand side of the screen you can see the scopes. The scopes are the red, green and blue content. As you can see, the red, green and blue are much of a muchness. There's a little bit more blue on the right-hand side. That's because the sky and the water are quite bright and vibrant, whereas the red is a little bit more subdued. This next clip shows this a little bit more. You can see on the right hand side of the red, green and blue that the blue and green are higher. You can see looking at the scopes here that the blue is empty in the bottom part on the right hand column. This is because in the picture it's all very bright blue content for the sky and the water, which is shown at the top here. Similarly with the green you've got this emptiness and a lot more sort of mid-tones in the green. Whereas the red is a little bit thinner here. However, on the left-hand side of the picture, corresponding with where the boat is, the profile of colours is a little bit different. Don't worry, you don't need to understand the scopes in any great depth, but it is a means for understanding what's going on with the picture. When we look at this next picture that was shot about 10 metres below the surface, we can see that the image itself is very blue. You can see a fish on the bottom left and you can see a turtle in the middle. Everything is incredibly blue because red light is filtered out by the water. When we look at the scopes, we can see the blue and the green are pretty vibrant up the top here, but the red is dropped down. In this case, the image can be colour balanced so that it'll look good, but straight off the camera, it's a horrible blue. This next image is straight off the camera after putting a red filter on. The red filter balances the picture by cutting out some of the light that isn't red. This does mean that a little bit less light gets into the camera, but it does allow for the image to automatically be balanced and vibrant. As you can see here in the scopes, the red, green and blue are a lot more even if there is a vibrant blue line at the top. This is because of all the blue water in the background of the shot. These first two shots were shot at about 10 metres below the surface, and you can see the difference that is made by the lack of red light in the first image and using a filter. This next image is from a clip shot at about 16 metres. As you can see, the difference between the red content in the scopes and the green and blue content in the scopes is more pronounced than it was before. Before, there was some overlap. In this case, they're distinctly separate. This is without using a filter at 16 metres. This next shot was a few seconds after the first one. In this instance, I've used a filter that is designed for lower depths of diving. As you can see, the red is still below the green and the blue content, but they are a little bit closer together, and the picture looks to have slightly more balanced colour. In this next image, I've used a dive filter that is designed for deeper depths, much more appropriate for the depth at hand. In this case, the red, green and blue content are a lot more in line. What we see here is the red is actually too vibrant. This is because the red filter is now allowing more red light through unusually, and that is giving the image some purple tints and some yellow tints in places. This can also be adjusted in post-production. This next image is a worst case scenario. This is footage from a GoPro Hero 4 without using a filter at all. As you can see, there is blue and there is green content, but the red content is just a little bit of a smudge at the bottom. In this case, there is no getting any of that red back. There are ways that you can colorize this image, but in this case, it's more like painting than anything else. There is certainly no original red content that anybody can lift out of it. The next few clips are from a greater depth. Previously, we looked at depths of 10 meters and 16 meters. Now we're looking at depths of 20 meters and more. These provide their own challenges with regards to light and filters. One of the key challenges at depth, as shown by this picture, is a general lack of light and very thin scopes. These can be stretched out to produce more contrast and show the content of the picture. I'll demonstrate that now. I haven't spent much time looking at the colour, but at least now the shark and the collection of rays in the image are a little more visible. In this case, a red filter was used for the original footage because the red, green and blue are fairly aligned. If a red filter hadn't been used, this footage would be very similar to the previous one without any red content. Here is another similar image with the red, green and blue fairly level. One thing you may notice is that the red content is very thin. This is because at this depth there's not a lot of red light at all, and even using the filter makes it challenging. However, you can see the flesh tones are still somewhat reasonable. Here is another shot on a wreck filmed at about 20 meters, again using a filter. The flesh tones are a little bit green, but because the red content is there, you can still retrieve it. Similar with this shot, again as it came off the camera. This shot that was filmed about 20 meters using the GoPro Hero 7, you can see the red is down very low. What becomes most challenging here is we've got this long tail of content on the blue and on the green, but the tail is actually going to be cut off on the red. Even if I try to increase it, you can see that it's got this tail cut off. Now that I've shown some examples of the footage as it comes off the camera, I'll dive a little bit deeper into colour correction and post-production work on colour. The science and the techniques are going to remain fairly consistent depending on what software you're going to use. I'm not going to delve into the details because I don't intend for this to be a tutorial. I'll start with this image that's using the filter and everything's come off the camera quite nicely. All I've had to do in my colour correction work is increase the contrast and squeeze out a bit more mid-detail to sharpen the image, and that's it. By comparison, my first shot of the turtle, filmed without a filter, has come out incredibly blue. It's very easy to start this off and just pump up the red. Essentially, I told it everything in this scopes bar that is currently red, push it up. I also moved the green down a touch. I've then used one of the more advanced tools, the colour warper, to push some of the blues just a little bit more white. And then I've thrown in a little bit extra contrast to bring out the turtles. One thing that is very key to see as a difference made by the filter is if I turn off all of my enhancements, you can see that the blue and the green are pushing at the top of the scopes. After applying the changes, you can see this line at the top of the blue here and a similar line at the top of the green. What this means is that the brightest parts of the images have clipped. What this translates to is a loss of detail. By comparison, if we look at this shot, the red, green and blue are not clipping in the same way. There is a handful of blue content that is pushed beyond, but that's actually in line with these bubbles in the picture, which can become more white anyway. Similarly, here's the footage that was done at 16 meters. First, not using a filter, this has been recovered quite reasonably, although you're missing some richness in skin tones. This is a next shot using a filter that is used for 25 to 80 feet. After some simple tweaks to the colour, we've got a much more convincing picture. However, it's still not great. This is because it was filmed at 16 meters, which is deeper than the ideal depth for the particular filter used. This next clip was where I was testing the deep dive filter. As you can see, there's some richness in the skin tones, albeit a little bit green, and a little bit too much purple to the sides and some orange going on. But that can be balanced out quite easily, and now with some simple modification, we're getting some pretty convincing skin tones. Lastly, I wasn't able to do anything to save this particular footage that was a complete blue wash. I only had two options. One, I could enhance it and keep it blue, or if I wanted people to be able to pick things out in detail, I found turning it into black and white made everything really stand out and gave a really sharp picture. I hope this video clarifies the use of filters with regards to dive footage, particularly on action cameras like the GoPro. I wanted to go into a lot more depth, but realised very quickly that this video was going to get longer and longer as I had to explain more and more things. So I'm going to split out the use of lights into another video and some more sample footage and comparisons into other videos for people who are interested. For now, I hope that this has explained and demonstrated where filters are useful on dive footage and the advantage they can bring to both getting footage straight off the camera and colour balancing. They aren't a magic fix-all, but they certainly have their place in video editing and capturing on GoPro when diving.